Welcome back to the gun dungeon. Gonna do another reloading and rambling today. Sitting here loading some 38 special. 38 special, 158 grain, semi-wad cutter, Winchester 231 powder. Kind of the quintessential beginning reloader cartridge. And look at that, right off the bat. Wasted a primer. We'll save the powder 4 grains. Hopefully we can get this to focus here. Maybe. Come on. Look at that. See it? Cracked case mouth. So I tend to try to not overwork the case mouth on revolver cartridges with over expanding them. I'll show you what I mean here in a second, because that gets worked quite a bit with a roll crimp. So typically my expander is set fairly light, and you'll see I don't really expand that case mouth a whole lot. Come on now, hide my ugly mug. There we go. You can see there's not a lot of expansion there. There's just enough to where I can get that bullet started and not shave lead. Because if you overexpand, you'll get those cracked case mouths like that more often. Just saves the life of your brass by not overexpanding the case mouth. But anyways, 38, like I said, Winchester 231, 158 grain semi-wad cutter. That is, to me, the basics of reloading. Look at that roll crimp. Ain't that pretty? Y'all gotta admit, a pretty roll crimp is hard to beat. I'm weird. I know I'm weird when it comes to reloading stuff. But 38's one of those cartridges I can load all day. Nothing takes too much force. Resizing it is easy. There's nothing that requires you to really crank on the press. I can sit and reload 38 special and watch old Clint Eastwood movies all day long and never tire out. Now, something like, I was loading a lot of 10 millimeter yesterday. It seems like 10 millimeter requires a lot more force to resize, especially when you start getting into some of the cases that were higher pressure. They got that bulge, or if it was from a Glock, you got the Glock bulge you gotta try to bust out. So some of those take quite a bit of force sometimes. It's not as fun to reload as like the old 38 here. But what I want to talk about today, as you saw from the title, is some home defense topics. And there's a couple different topics that I really want to touch on. And it seems like in the gun community, gun forums, a lot of the areas where home defense is talked about, you see a lot of talk about over penetration of interior walls. Now, and some people will base their entire home defense weapon off of the penetration, whether it'll over penetrate, whether it slows down in drywall, and a lot of it's incorrect. Like, some people think that a 9 millimeter will penetrate less sheetrock walls than, say, a 5.56. That's actually not true. The lighter and faster the bullet is, the less drywall it's going to penetrate typically, just because that bullet will kind of break up from the velocity itself and taking less obstacle to do it, such as drywall. But if you're not hitting interior wall studs and it's just drywall, really there's no round that's going to stop in one interior wall of just 2 pieces of drywall, of sheetrock, that's going to be effective for a home defense weapon. It really is that simple. Like, maybe if you are trying to stop it from going through 5-6 interior walls, one may be better than the other. But if you're just talking from room to room, a 22 long rifle is going to go through one interior wall and still be lethal on the other side. So I don't base my home defense weapon off of whether it will penetrate drywall, how much drywall it penetrates, stuff like that. Even a Glazer safety slug will go through one interior wall without hitting studs, of course, and still be lethal on the other side. So to me, I focus more on, well, I lost that primer. Focus more on, you can't really change the layout of your house. Although when I bought this house, I knew exactly what I was looking for. This is a log home on top of a hill, 9-inch thick log exterior walls, hard to shoot through either direction. If you get my drift, on top of a hill, easy to defend. That was one thing I was looking for. Also have poured concrete walkout basement with cinder block interior for some reason. So it's very, very sturdily built on the outside. Also, the interior walls, when it comes to worrying about those, all of my bedrooms are on one end of the home. So like if I'm in my bedroom and the kids are all in their rooms, we're all on the same side of the house. So if we had some sort of home invasion, whatever, the second that I step outside of my bedroom door, the kids' rooms are now behind me from a shooting standpoint inside the home. Of course, if that person were to shoot back, you know, they're all in that line of fire that way. But there's also something that you can do about that. Now, if you have a bunch of money to spend, they make these like blankets of level 3A body armor. It's just like I forget the size, maybe 6 foot by 6 foot, something like that. You can put inside closet walls, interior walls, whatever. That's going to give you some level of protection. But, you know, if you've got your bedroom on one end of the house and your kids' bedrooms are on the other end of the house, and you know your entryways are in the middle of those, if a home invasion were to happen, that home invader is probably going to be in between you guys. Your best bet is to just harden those interior walls. And it doesn't take a $500 6 foot by 6 foot level 3A sheet. You can do it with bookshelves. Bookshelves are an excellent way to harden an interior wall from firearms. If you have you'd have to have the bookshelf full, of course. The shelf itself's not going to do a whole lot. But you can get creative with stuff like that. Have a good bookshelf full of books inside on either side of the wall. It's not going to really matter. That's going to provide some level of protection. But you can also kind of create, I hate to use the term that strategies and tactics uses for this, but it's basically called a funnel of death, which is like, again, I'm going to go back to my house. The way that my house is set up, all the rooms on one side, living room, entryways, all on the other side of the house. I keep the side of the house where the doorways and most likely entryways are fairly lit. So I'll have some sort of backlighting or whatever. And where the bedrooms are, and in the bedrooms, dark, completely dark. So what that does is if you have an intruder inside, they're in a lit room. Their eyes are adjusted for some source of light. You are in a dark room looking into a lit room. You can see them, but they can't see you all that well unless you turn on a flashlight or something like that. But, you know, it's just like hunting. And I hate to say that either because you're not hunting humans, but you have shooting lanes when you're hunting. If you're hunting thick brush area, you have shooting lanes. You're not going to shoot a deer wherever you see it if it's in thick brush and you can't get a shot. So if your home is set up in a manner to where there are some questionable directions to be shooting, you can't do it. I mean, unless it's an absolutely have-to situation, you don't want to take those shots. You don't want to take those risks. So you want to set up essentially shooting lanes inside your house where you have a backlight. They don't. where if this intruder were to step into this area, you have a safe shot. Set yourself up that way. To me, going about home defense in that manner makes a whole lot more sense than hoping that a round just doesn't penetrate drywall. I don't know if y'all have watched any of the drywall tests or anything like that, but drywall doesn't stop a whole lot. And like I said, one interior wall is nothing. There's nothing in it. And your odds of hitting a stud are very, very slim. It's a 2x4 studs, typically on 16-inch centers. So your odds of hitting a stud through a single wall, how many of y'all ever hung picture frames? Hell, you can't hit the stud when you're trying to most of the time, or at least I can't. But, if you're relying on that, I think you're going about it in the wrong way, and you probably have yourself set up underserved with a firearm or ammunition choice that's not all that effective, because that would be the only way that you're going to get less interior wall penetrations, and even then, you're still going to penetrate walls. I just think it's over talked about in a sense that there's something you can do about it from a firearm or ammunition standpoint. Because to me, I mean, I think typically most of us, unless you're just flat loaded, most of us live in fairly decent, smaller houses. I mean, if you live in a mansion that has 15 rooms between you and your kids' rooms or whatever, yeah, you probably are fine. But I think most people live in a setting to where 2-3 interior walls is about all you're going to have between you and potentially your kids' rooms or, living areas where somebody might be, something like that. But like I said, hardening walls is a really good idea. This is probably a little extreme, but I keep body armor in our bedroom, and it's fairly quickly accessible. I know in heat of the moment type that's happening right now thing, you're not going to get to it. That's not going to be the first thing on your mind, especially, but it's there if you have a chance. That's also something maybe to consider. And depending on your kids or whoever's there, maybe training them on how to use it. If there's an emergency, get to a certain area of the bedroom that would be more typically out of the way. Maybe the corner, area behind a stairwell, something like that. You just got to think about the configuration of your home and potential entry points. If you have a window that's ground level versus a window that is 10 feet off the ground, you don't really have to worry so much about the window that's 10 feet off the ground, but the one that's ground level is a potential entry point. So my advice today is to just think about the layout of your home and how to set your home up for more successful opportunities if something bad were to happen, as opposed to trying to condition your firearm or your ammunition choices to fit into an area that's not all that effective. Because again, I would hate to think that I had to fire a shot with my kids laying behind the target with one interior wall behind them. And I'm gonna go back to the layout of my home for an example. It's my home, it's the only example I have. But even positioning my bed in my bedroom, the way the kids' rooms are, if I were to have to shoot from my bed, from a nightstand, turn and shoot, my bed is positioned to where I would shoot towards your door. That's where somebody coming in is going to be, is at your door. So you need to think of the angles from where you're going to be in the room to the door and beyond. So the way that my bed is positioned, if I were to have to do that, I would actually be shooting towards my door, and then directly behind that would be into the bathroom. So if I had my bed on the other side of the room, the angle would change and I would be shooting into another interior bedroom. So again, there's a lot you can potentially think about. A lot you can do, change. Wife may not like it. Moving the bed around and putting up bookshelves in random areas that don't make sense decor-wise. But, you know, it's all things to consider, talk about, definitely think about. But that is my ramble for today. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. I know I enjoyed discussing it and reloading this wonderful 38 special. One more look at that. Just there you go. Look at that purdy roll crimp. Golly. I just love reloading. I love reloading about everything. But anyways, that's what I got for you today, guys. Let me know your thoughts and comments below. I love reading your comments, especially topics like this that tend to get a bit controversial. But until next time, guys, stay tuned.